Imagine a civilization lost to the mists of time. It flourished over 4.5 millennia ago. This was the Indus Valley Civilization, or IVC. It rose in the fertile plains of what is now Pakistan and northwest India. Between roughly 2600 and 1900 BCE, its people built an astonishing world, a world that for thousands of years lay silent and buried. Its grand story waited patiently beneath the earth. Only recently have we begun to listen to its whispers. This was not a minor player on the world stage. The Indus Valley Civilization was a contemporary of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Yet it sprawled over a far larger area. Its domain stretched for hundreds of thousands of square miles. From the foothills of the Himalayas to the Arabian Sea coast. Think about that. An area greater than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined, a colossal entity hidden in plain sight for so long. Its rediscovery in the 1920s rewrote chapters of ancient history. For centuries, its existence was unknown to the wider world. Farmers ploughed their fields above its buried cities. Local legends might have hinted at ancient peoples, but the scale and sophistication were unguessed. Then archaeologists began to unearth its secrets. What they found was astounding. Not primitive settlements, but well-planned urban centres, a testament to a highly organised society, a society that thrived while Europe was still in its prehistoric infancy. How did such a giant vanish from our collective memory? The Indus people didn't leave behind towering pyramids or boastful king lists like their contemporaries. They left something perhaps more intriguing, a legacy of quiet competence and enigmatic complexity. Their story is a puzzle, with many pieces still missing, but each discovery adds a new line, a new colour to their portrait. We are still piecing together the narrative of this forgotten giant, a civilization that challenges our understanding of early human societies, and it all began with the uncovering of ancient mounds, revealing the ghosts of a bygone era. The heart of the Indus Valley Civilization beat within its remarkable cities, places like Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa and Dholavira. These were not haphazard collections of dwellings. They were marvels of urban planning. Once these cities teemed with life, bustling centres of commerce and culture. Today their weathered ruins stand as silent witnesses, testaments to a sophisticated Bronze Age society. Imagine walking their streets, not as they are now, but as they were then, filled with the sounds and sights of a vibrant populace. Consider their layout. The streets ran in a precise grid pattern, main thoroughfares oriented north-south and east-west. This suggests careful surveying and central planning. Homes were built with baked bricks, strikingly uniform in size, not just within one city but across the entire civilization. This standardization is extraordinary. It speaks of a shared system of measurement and production. It hints at a level of coordination previously unimagined for this era. These were cities built for order and efficiency, but their ingenuity didn't stop at street grids and standardized bricks. The Indus people were pioneers of sanitation. Many houses had their own bathrooms and toilets. These were connected to covered drains that ran alongside the streets. An intricate sewage system carried waste away from residential areas. Think about it, sophisticated urban plumbing over 4,000 years ago. They even built large public structures. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro is a prime example, a large watertight tank, possibly used for ritual bathing or public ceremonies, a feat of ancient engineering. What does all this tell us? It speaks of a society that valued order, hygiene, and communal living. The attention to detail in their urban infrastructure is breathtaking. They developed standardized weights and measures. This would have been crucial for trade and taxation. Small carved stone weights have been found in abundance, all conforming to a consistent system. This level of organization across such a vast territory is truly remarkable. These were not just cities, they were intricate machines for living. Now here's where the Indus story takes a fascinating turn. In Egypt, pharaohs built colossal pyramids to trumpet their glory. In Mesopotamia, mighty kings erected grand palaces and temples. These monuments celebrated gods and rulers. They were symbols of power, often built by vast armies of laborers or even slaves. We expect ancient civilizations to follow this pattern. But the Indus Valley Civilization, it challenges these expectations profoundly. Archaeologists have found no definitive evidence of grand royal tombs, no monumental palaces for powerful kings. Remarkably, there is also very little sign of warfare. Weapons are scarce among the excavated artifacts. City walls, where they exist, seem more for flood control than defense against armies. This is a stark contrast to their contemporaries, who often depicted battles and conquests in their art. The Indus people, it seems, managed their society differently. How do you govern a vast territory with numerous cities without the usual trappings of kingship? How do you maintain peace and order without a visible military machine? These are the questions that make the IVC so enigmatic. Yet this was no small, scattered population. At its peak, the Indus Valley civilization may have supported over 5 million people. Some estimates suggest even more. This could have been larger than the populations of ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia during their Old Kingdom and early dynastic periods, respectively. Imagine that, millions of people living in well-organized cities, participating in complex trade networks, all seemingly without the iron fist of a monarch or the constant threat of war. It's a societal model that makes us pause and wonder. This leads us to a compelling idea. Perhaps their strength lay not in power but in cooperation, not in glory but in brilliance. No kings, no armies, no glory, just brilliance. This phrase captures the essence of their unique achievement. Their society appears to have been remarkably egalitarian for its time, focused on trade, craftsmanship, and civic amenities. The mystery of their governance remains, but their legacy is one of peaceful coexistence and sophisticated organization. A civilization that chose a different path, a path that still holds lessons for us today. Perfect. Civilizations rise on foundations of ingenuity and resourcefulness. They build cities, master crafts, and organize societies. We often marvel at their tangible achievements, the grand structures, the intricate tools, the systems they create. Yet every civilization, no matter how advanced, exists within a larger system, the Earth system. And this system has its own rhythms, its own immense power, a power that can nurture but also one that can turn. Sometimes the greatest threats are not invading armies or internal strife. Sometimes the threat comes from the sky itself. The people of the Indus Valley were masters of their domain. They engineered cities with remarkable precision. They managed water with sophisticated systems. They fostered a culture that seemingly thrived without overt displays of royal power. Their focus was on order, on trade, on the practicalities of urban life. They had harnessed the resources of the land to build a vast and populous society. But what about the resources from above, the rain, the seasonal cycles, the very climate that cradled their existence? Could they control these, or were they, like all life, ultimately subject to the planet's grander, often unpredictable designs? So we must ask a critical question. Was it the sky that betrayed them? Did the very elements that allowed their fields to flourish eventually turn against them? It's a chilling thought, a civilization so adept at managing its earthly environment, yet potentially undone by forces originating far beyond their immediate control, forces that operated on timescales much longer than human lives or even dynasties. The irony is profound. Their sophisticated infrastructure, their peaceful coexistence, all could be rendered fragile. Fragile if the climatic conditions that underpinned their world began to unravel. This was not a sudden catastrophe like a volcanic eruption or a great earthquake. If the climate was indeed the culprit, its betrayal would have been slow, insidious, a gradual tightening of nature's grip. Imagine summers growing a little longer, a little hotter each year, the vital monsoons arriving a bit later or with less generosity, these subtle shifts accumulating over decades, even centuries. An invisible enemy, against which their well-ordered streets and standardized bricks offered little defense. A creeping crisis born from the very air they breathed and the rains they awaited. Section 2 echoes in the earth, reading the climate's past. How can we possibly know what the weather was like 4,000 years ago? There were no satellites, no meteorological stations. The Indus people left us no written climate records we can decipher. The answer lies hidden, buried in the earth itself. Scientists, like cosmic detectives, have learned to read these ancient clues. This field is called paleoclimatology. It is the science of past climates, and it provides compelling evidence of dramatic environmental shifts that coincided with the Indus civilization's mysterious decline. One set of clues comes from pollen, tiny, almost indestructible grains released by plants. These grains get preserved in layers of sediment, in lake beds, in bogs, even in ancient brickwork. By drilling cores and analyzing these microscopic fossils, scientists can reconstruct past vegetation. Different plants thrive in different climatic conditions. A shift from pollen of water-loving plants to drought-resistant species tells a clear story. It speaks of a land growing progressively drier, a silent testimony from the plant kingdom. Then there are the sediment cores. These are long cylinders of earth drilled from ocean floors or lake bottoms. Each layer in these cores is like a page in Earth's diary. It traps dust, chemical signatures, and even the shells of tiny marine organisms. The composition of these shells, specifically the isotopes of oxygen within them, can reveal past water temperatures. They can also indicate changes in evaporation and rainfall. These deep-sea archives provide a continuous record, a timeline of climatic ebbs and flows stretching back thousands of years. And sometimes the evidence is etched onto the landscape itself. Vast, dried-up riverbeds visible from space. These are the ghostly outlines of once mighty rivers that nourished the Indus cities. Today they are relics of a wetter past. Geologists study these paleochannels, analyzing their sediments and tracing their ancient courses. When combined, pollen, sediment cores, and desiccated river networks paint a powerful picture. A picture of a changing world, a world where the life-giving waters began to recede. Section 3, The Thirsting Lands. When the rains began to fail. The Indus Valley civilization was a child of the monsoon. This seasonal wind system is the lifeblood of South Asia. It brings the torrential rains that swell the rivers and replenish the groundwater. For millennia, these predictable summer deluges sustained agriculture across the vast Indus plains. The Indus people built their entire agricultural calendar, their very sustenance, around this rhythm. Their granaries, once filled with wheat and barley, were a testament to the monsoon's bounty. Their prosperity was directly linked to these vital, life-giving rains. But around 2000 BCE, scientists believe something profound began to happen. The monsoon patterns started to weaken. They became less reliable, less generous. This wasn't a single dry year or even a few. It appears to have been a prolonged period of climatic disruption, a significant long-term shift in atmospheric circulation. The reasons are complex, possibly linked to changes in solar radiation or shifts in ocean currents far away. Whatever the ultimate cause, the effect on the Indus region would have been devastating. The once dependable sky became fickle. The great rivers that defined the Indus landscape began to feel the strain. The mighty Indus itself, fed by Himalayan glaciers, would have seen reduced flows. But even more critically affected were rivers like the Ganga-Hakra. This extensive river system once flowed parallel to the Indus. Many scholars believe it to be the legendary Saraswati River, celebrated in ancient Vedic texts. Evidence suggests this river system was largely monsoon-fed. As the monsoons weakened, the Ganga-Hakra dwindled. Its waters receded, leaving behind a parched and barren valley where thriving settlements once stood. The consequences for their advanced agricultural system were inescapable, and the Indus people were skilled farmers. They likely employed sophisticated irrigation techniques, but even the best engineering struggles when the primary water sources diminished so drastically. Canals would run dry, wells would deepen then fail. The carefully cultivated fields, the basis of their urban society, would have begun to crack and turn to dust. The faltering pulse of the rivers signaled a deep crisis, a crisis striking at the very heart of their civilization's ability to feed its people. Section 4. A famine of sustenance. The cracks begin to show. The agricultural engine of the Indus Valley civilization was a marvel of its time. It supported large urban populations. It fueled trade and craftsmanship. This system relied on a delicate balance, a balance of fertile soil, skilled labor, and above all, predictable water. For centuries, this balance held. It allowed cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa to flourish. But when the patterns of rainfall shifted, when the rivers began to shrink, this equilibrium was broken. The once reliable foundation of their sustenance started to crumble beneath their feet. The initial impacts might have been subtle: a slightly poorer harvest one year, a delay in the planting season the next, livestock finding less pasture. These early warnings might have been absorbed by their storage systems, by their resilience. But as the drying trend persisted, the pressure would have mounted relentlessly. Fields that once yielded abundant crops of wheat and barley would have produced less and less. The diversity of their agriculture, which included dates, melons, and cotton, would have suffered. Scarcity would have begun to replace surplus. This wasn't just an agricultural crisis, it was a human tragedy unfolding in slow motion. Imagine the granaries, once symbols of security, gradually emptying. Imagine the anxiety in the households as food supplies dwindled. The quote often used to describe this period is stark. The land that once fed millions became dust under their feet. This captures the profound sense of loss, the betrayal by an environment that had nurtured them for so long. The very earth that gave them life was now failing them. This was a famine, not just of food, but of hope. The intricate urban fabric of Indus society, with its planned streets and public baths, depended on this agricultural base. As food security eroded, the social order would have come under immense strain. People would have been forced to make difficult choices. Could the cities continue to function if they could not feed their inhabitants? Or would people begin to leave, seeking water and fertile land elsewhere? The weakening monsoons and drying rivers were not just environmental changes, they were catalysts for profound social upheaval. The first cracks in their magnificent civilization were beginning to show. When we speak of ancient civilizations, numbers matter. They breathe life into the ruins. They transform dusty artifacts into stories of human endeavor. The Indus Valley civilization was not a quaint scattering of settlements. It was a sprawling network of human life. Imagine trying to count them, to quantify the sheer human energy that pulsed through its cities and towns. This was a society of significant demographic weight, a colossal human experiment unfolding on the plains of South Asia thousands of years ago. Their numbers alone set them apart. Estimates suggest that at its zenith, the Indus civilization was home to over 5 million souls. 5 million. Let that number sink in. This wasn't the population of a modest kingdom. This was a figure that rivaled and perhaps even surpassed the most celebrated empires of its time. Supporting such a vast number of people required incredible organization. It demanded agricultural productivity on an immense scale. It necessitated systems for distribution, for communication, for coexistence. This wasn't just a collection of individuals, it was a highly integrated human ecosystem. This teeming population wasn't confined to just one or two megacities. It was spread across a vast territory encompassing hundreds of sites. From major urban centers like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa to smaller towns and villages, each playing a part in the larger societal fabric. This density, this sheer human presence, would have shaped every aspect of Indus life, from the way they managed their resources to the way they structured their communities. The challenge of feeding, housing and maintaining order for so many is a testament to their sophisticated societal framework. Think of the logistics, the sheer volume of food required daily, the water needed for drinking, bathing and sanitation, the raw materials for construction, for crafts, for tools. To sustain 5 million people for centuries speaks volumes about their understanding of agriculture, their mastery of water management and their ability to organize labor. Before we even touch upon their unique governance, this demographic achievement is staggering. It paints a picture of a civilization that was not just surviving but thriving on a grand scale, a true giant of the Bronze Age world. To truly grasp the significance of the Indus people's numbers, we must look at their contemporaries, the grand civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia. These are often the names that first spring to mind when we think of the ancient world. Pharaohs and ziggurats, hieroglyphs and cuneiform. They cast long shadows across history. Their populations, during their peak Old Kingdom and early dynastic periods respectively, were indeed substantial. They represented the pinnacles of human organization in their regions. For a long time they were considered the undisputed heavyweights of the Bronze Age. Yet the Indus Valley civilization enters this arena as a formidable contender, possibly even the champion in terms of sheer human numbers. While precise figures are debated, many scholars believe the IVC's 5 million plus inhabitants may have exceeded the populations of both Old Kingdom Egypt and early dynastic Mesopotamia. Imagine that. A civilization sprawling across a larger geographical area than either Egypt or Mesopotamia, and potentially supporting a greater number of people. This reframes our understanding of the ancient world's demographic landscape. It shifts the center of population gravity. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about the density and distribution across an enormous territory. The Indus Valley covered an area of over 1 million square kilometers. How did this compare? The combined area of cultivable land in Egypt and Mesopotamia was significantly smaller. This suggests that while cities like Mohenjo-Daro were densely populated, the civilization as a whole managed to sustain a large population across a truly vast expanse. This scale presents unique challenges for any form of administration or social cohesion, especially considering the technological limitations of the era. Why then, if they were such a demographic powerhouse, have they remained relatively unsung compared to Egypt or Mesopotamia? Perhaps their voice was quieter. They didn't leave behind colossal statues of rulers boasting of their conquests. Their script remains a silent mystery, locking away their own narratives. It's a fascinating thought, a civilization, potentially the largest of its time, choosing a path that didn't involve monumental self-promotion. Their legacy is more subtle, embedded in the silent ruins and the intriguing artifacts they left behind for us to ponder. Here lies one of the most profound mysteries of the Indus Valley civilization. We see the evidence of immense organization, the planned cities, the standardized weights and bricks, the sophisticated drainage systems. We see a population numbering in the millions, spread across a vast territory. All this implies some form of governance, some coordinating intelligence. Yet when we search for the usual symbols of ancient authority, we find a curious void. Where are the grand palaces of mighty kings? Where are the lavish royal tombs filled with treasures and proclaiming eternal power? Unlike Egypt with its pharaohs or Mesopotamia with its Luguls and Ensis, the Indus cities offer no clear evidence of such rulers. No monumental statues depict godlike sovereigns, no inscriptions sing praises of conquering heroes. This absence is striking. It forces us to ask fundamental questions. How did this complex society function? How were decisions made? How was order maintained among millions without the apparent presence of a centralized autocratic ruler? It challenges our conventional models of how ancient states operated. Could it be that power was structured differently? Perhaps it was more diffuse, more collective. Some scholars propose theories of governance by councils of elders, or assemblies of merchants, or even a priestly class. Though even religious structures like temples are not monumental in the way they are in other cultures. The remarkable uniformity of material culture, the bricks, the seals, the pottery, across such a vast area suggests a strong, shared cultural framework. Perhaps this shared identity, these common standards, acted as a form of social glue, a decentralized system of order. The very existence of large-scale public works like the Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro, or the intricate urban planning itself, points to a coordinating capacity. Someone or some group must have overseen these projects, but their identity remains elusive. Were they anonymous bureaucrats, efficient managers, rather than charismatic kings? Or was it a system based on consensus, on deeply ingrained social norms that obviated the need for overt displays of individual power? The Indus people managed to achieve immense societal complexity, seemingly without the iron fist of a monarch. This is their unique political puzzle. Beyond the mystery of their leadership, the very fabric of Indus society seems woven from a different thread. Consider the near absence of evidence for large-scale warfare. While other Bronze Age civilizations glorified conflict in their art and records, the Indus sites yield few weapons. City fortifications, where they exist, often appear designed more for flood control than for defense against invading armies. This suggests a society that either experienced prolonged periods of peace or resolved conflicts in ways that didn't involve widespread militarism, a remarkable proposition for such a large and complex entity. This apparent peacefulness may tie into another intriguing aspect, a seemingly more egalitarian social structure. While variations in house sizes and grave goods exist, they don't point to the extreme disparities of wealth and status seen in pharaonic Egypt or royal Mesopotamia. Public amenities like the sophisticated drainage systems served broad sections of the urban population, not just an elite. This focus on communal well-being, on shared infrastructure, paints a picture of a society that perhaps valued civic order and cooperation over hierarchy and individual aggrandizement. This brings us back to that compelling phrase, no kings, no armies, no glory, just brilliance. Their brilliance wasn't expressed in conquering empires or building towering monuments to individual rulers. Instead, it shone through their meticulous urban planning, their advanced sanitation, their standardized systems of weights and measures crucial for trade. It was evident in their exquisite craftsmanship, their intricate seals, their distinctive pottery. Their achievement was the creation of a stable, prosperous and highly organized society that thrived for centuries, apparently without the usual reliance on royal authority or military might. What if their strength lay precisely in this different blueprint? A society where order emerged not from the commands of a single sovereign, but from a complex interplay of shared norms, economic interdependence and collective civic responsibility. Perhaps their legacy is not one of missing kings, but of a successful alternative model of societal organization. A model that prioritized the smooth functioning of the whole, the quiet competence of its systems over the loud pronouncements of power. The Indus Valley civilization continues to challenge our assumptions, urging us to imagine different ways of structuring human existence on a grand scale. Human civilizations rise on foundations of ingenuity and resourcefulness. We build magnificent cities, we master complex crafts and organize vast societies. We often marvel at these tangible achievements, the grand structures, the intricate tools, the sophisticated systems we create. Yet, every civilization, no matter how advanced or well-ordered, exists within a much larger, more powerful system, the Earth system itself. This planetary engine has its own rhythms, its own immense power. A power that can nurture growth, but also one that can, without warning or malice, turn destructive. Sometimes the greatest threats are not invading armies or internal rebellion. Sometimes the adversary is the very environment that once cradled a people. The inhabitants of the Indus Valley were true masters of their domain. They had engineered cities with astonishing precision and foresight. They managed water with systems that were centuries ahead of their time. They fostered a unique culture that, as we've seen, seemingly thrived without the overt displays of royal power or military aggression. Their society was built upon order, on widespread trade, and on the practicalities of harmonious urban life. They had successfully harnessed the resources of the land to build a vast and populous civilization. But what about the resources from above, the rain, the seasonal cycles, the very climate that underpinned their existence? Could they control these elemental forces, or were they, like all life, ultimately subject to the planet's grander, often unpredictable climatic designs? So, we arrive at a critical, almost poignant question. Was it the sky that ultimately betrayed them? Did the very elements that allowed their fields to flourish, that filled their rivers and wells, eventually turn against them with a slow, unyielding pressure? It is a chilling and deeply ironic thought. A civilization so adept at managing its earthly environment, so focused on civic order and peaceful coexistence, yet potentially undone by forces originating far beyond their immediate control or understanding. Forces that operated on timescales much longer than human lives, or even the memory of generations. The irony is profound indeed. Their sophisticated infrastructure, their standardized systems, all could be rendered fragile if the climatic conditions that underpinned their world began to unravel systematically. This was likely not a sudden catastrophe like a singular devastating earthquake or a cataclysmic flood sweeping everything away in an instant. If the climate was indeed the primary culprit in the Indus decline, its betrayal would have been far more insidious, a gradual tightening of nature's grip. Imagine summers growing a little longer, a little hotter each passing decade. The vital monsoon rains, the lifeblood of their agriculture, arriving a bit later each year, or delivering less generosity when they finally came. These subtle shifts, accumulating over decades, perhaps even centuries, would constitute an invisible enemy, an enemy against which their well-ordered streets and standardized bricks offered precious little defense. A creeping crisis born from the very air they breathed and the rains they so desperately awaited. How can we possibly peer back 4,000 years to understand the weather patterns of a bygone era? There were no sophisticated satellites orbiting the Earth, no meticulously kept meteorological stations recording daily temperatures and rainfall. The Indus people themselves, though masters of many crafts, left us no written climate records that we can currently decipher. Their silent script holds its secrets close. So where do we find the answers? The clues lie hidden, locked away, buried deep within the Earth itself, patiently waiting to be read. Scientists, acting as cosmic detectives, have learned to interpret these ancient environmental archives. This fascinating field is called paleoclimatology, the science of past climates, and it provides compelling, multifaceted evidence of dramatic environmental shifts. Shifts that coincided ominously with the Indus civilization's mysterious decline. One crucial set of clues comes from ancient pollen. These are tiny, almost indestructible grains released by all flowering plants and conifers. These microscopic time capsules get preserved in layers of sediment. They accumulate in lake beds, in bogs, even within the mud used to make ancient bricks. By carefully drilling cores from these locations and painstakingly analyzing the types and quantities of pollen grains in each layer, scientists can reconstruct past vegetation patterns. Different plants thrive under specific climatic conditions. A discernible shift in the pollen record, perhaps from species that love water to those that tolerate drought, tells a clear and unambiguous story. It speaks of a land growing progressively drier over time, a silent botanical testimony from the plant kingdom itself. Then there are the invaluable sediment cores. These are long cylinders of earth, carefully extracted by drilling into ocean floors or the bottoms of ancient lakes. Each layer within these cores is like a page in Earth's incredibly detailed diary. It traps atmospheric dust, carries chemical signatures of past environments, and even contains the fossilized shells of tiny marine or freshwater organisms. The chemical composition of these microscopic shells, specifically the isotopes of oxygen within them, can reveal past water temperatures and salinity. They can also indicate crucial changes in evaporation rates and overall rainfall amounts. These deep-sea and lakebed archives provide a continuous, high-resolution record, a timeline of climatic ebbs and flows stretching back thousands, even millions of years, offering context to the Indus period. And sometimes, the most dramatic evidence is etched directly onto the face of the landscape itself. Vast dried-up riverbeds, so large they are clearly visible from space, snake across the plains where Indus cities once thrived. These are the ghostly outlines of once mighty rivers, channels that carried life-giving water to countless settlements. Today they are stark relics of a wetter, more vibrant past. Geologists and archaeologists meticulously study these paleo-channels. They analyze their sediments, trace their ancient courses, and map the settlements that once lined their banks. When combined, the evidence from pollen, sediment cores, and these desiccated river networks paints a powerful and consistent picture. A picture of a profoundly changing world. A world where the vital waters that sustained a civilization began to recede, leaving an indelible mark. The Indus Valley civilization was, in essence, a child of the monsoon. This remarkable seasonal wind system is the undisputed lifeblood of the entire South Asian subcontinent. It brings the torrential summer rains that swell the mighty rivers, replenish the groundwater, and transform arid landscapes into fertile plains. For millennia, These relatively predictable summer deluges sustained agriculture across the vast Indus region. The Indus people, astute observers of their environment, built their entire agricultural calendar, their very sustenance, around this vital rhythm of nature. Their impressive granaries, once filled to capacity with wheat and barley, stood as proud testaments to the monsoon's bounty. Their widespread prosperity was directly and inextricably linked to these vital, life-giving seasonal rains. But around 2000 BCE, a period coinciding with the mature phase of the Indus civilization, scientists believe something profound and ominous began to happen. The monsoon patterns, once so reliable, started to weaken significantly. They became less predictable, less generous with their life-sustaining moisture. This was not simply a single dry year or even a short string of drought years. The evidence points towards a prolonged period of climatic disruption, a significant long-term shift in atmospheric circulation patterns, likely driven by larger global climatic changes. The precise reasons are still debated by scientists, possibly linked to subtle changes in solar radiation or shifts in ocean currents in faraway seas. Whatever the ultimate global cause, the regional effect on the Indus River basin would have been increasingly devastating. The once dependable sky became fickle, its promises of rain less certain. The great rivers that defined the Indus landscape, the arteries of this civilization, began to feel the relentless strain of diminishing rainfall. The mighty Indus River itself, primarily fed by Himalayan glaciers, would have seen reduced flows as glacial meltwater patterns also shifted and local rainfall decreased. But even more critically affected were rivers like the Ghaggar Hakra. This extensive river system once flowed majestically through the heartland of the Indus territory, parallel to the Indus. Many scholars believe this to be the physical basis for the legendary Saraswati River, celebrated in ancient Vedic texts as a powerful, life-giving deity. Crucially, evidence strongly suggests this Ghaggar Hakra system was largely monsoon-fed rather than glacier-fed. As the monsoons weakened consistently, the Ghaggar Hakra dwindled. Its waters receded, leaving behind a parched and barren valley where numerous thriving settlements once stood, a shadow of its former glory. The consequences for their highly developed agricultural system were inescapable and dire. The Indus people were undeniably skilled farmers. They likely employed sophisticated irrigation techniques, including canals and wells, to manage water resources effectively. But even the most ingenious human engineering struggles when the primary water sources diminish so drastically over extended periods. Canals would have run dry more frequently. The water table would have dropped, forcing them to deepen wells until even those failed to provide sufficient water. The carefully cultivated fields of wheat, barley, cotton and other crops, the very basis of their urban society and surplus production, would have begun to crack under the relentless sun and turn to dust. The faltering pulse of the rivers signaled a deep existential crisis, a crisis striking at the very heart of their civilization's ability to feed its millions of people. The sophisticated agricultural engine of the Indus Valley civilization was truly a marvel of its time. It consistently produced enough surplus to support large, densely populated urban centers. It fueled vibrant trade networks that stretched across vast distances and supported a diverse array of skilled craftspeople. This entire system, however, relied on a delicate and crucial balance, a balance of fertile alluvial soil, the skilled labor of its farmers, and above all, a predictable and sufficient supply of water. For many centuries, this delicate equilibrium held strong. It allowed magnificent cities like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and Dholavira to flourish and expand. But when the ancient patterns of rainfall shifted decisively, when the life-giving rivers began to shrink and some disappeared entirely, this fundamental balance was irrevocably broken. The once reliable foundation of their sustenance started to crumble beneath their feet. The initial impacts of this creeping desiccation might have been subtle, almost imperceptible at first, perhaps a slightly poorer harvest one year attributed to bad luck, a noticeable delay in the onset of the planting season the next, livestock finding less abundant pasture, leading to thinner herds. These early warnings, these gentle nudges from a changing environment, might have been absorbed by their extensive storage systems in granaries, by their inherent societal resilience. But as the drying trend persisted and intensified over decades, the pressure would have mounted relentlessly and unforgivingly. Fields that once yielded abundant crops of wheat and barley would have produced progressively less. The rich diversity of their agriculture, which also included dates, melons, sesame and cotton, would have suffered immensely. Scarcity would have begun to replace surplus, a chilling new reality for a once prosperous people. This wasn't just an abstract agricultural crisis. It was a profound human tragedy unfolding in agonizing slow motion across the Indus plains. Imagine the great granaries, once symbols of civic security and abundance, gradually emptying, their reserves dwindling with each passing season of poor rains. Imagine the growing anxiety within individual households as daily food supplies became less certain. The poignant quote often used to describe this grim period is starkly evocative. The land that once fed millions became dust under their feet. This simple phrase powerfully captures the profound sense of loss and desolation, the betrayal by an environment that had nurtured them for so long. The very earth that had given them life and prosperity was now failing to sustain them. This was a famine not just of food, but ultimately a famine of hope. The intricate and well-ordered urban fabric of Indus society, with its meticulously planned streets, advanced drainage and public amenities, depended entirely on this agricultural base. As food security eroded, the complex social order would have come under immense, unbearable strain. People would have been forced to make increasingly difficult choices for survival. Could the large cities continue to function if they could no longer reliably feed their diverse inhabitants? Or would people begin to leave in significant numbers, seeking out scarce water and more fertile land in other regions, perhaps to the east or south? The weakening monsoons and the drying rivers were not just environmental changes. They were powerful catalysts for profound social upheaval, internal displacement, and ultimately the gradual abandonment of their once glorious cities. The first deep cracks in their magnificent civilization were widening into an irreparable breach. Imagine holding a message from 4,000 years ago, a message carved by hands long since turned to dust. This is the reality of the Indus script. Thousands of these inscriptions have been found. Most are etched onto small square seals. These tiny artifacts are tangible links to the minds of the Indus people, yet despite decades of study, they remain profoundly silent. Their meanings are locked away, awaiting a key we have yet to discover. This script is one of ancient history's most tantalizing puzzles. The seals themselves are marvels of miniature art. They are typically crafted from steatite, a soft stone that was then fired to harden it. Most are no bigger than a postage stamp. Each one is intricately carved. They often feature stunning depictions of animals, powerful bulls, graceful antelopes, and the famous, perhaps mythical unicorn figure. Above these creatures, or sometimes alongside, are the symbols, a sequence of characters that make up the Indus script, elegant, mysterious, and utterly unreadable to us. Over 4,000 such inscribed objects have been unearthed by archaeologists. This is a significant number. They are not just found in the great cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. They appear in smaller settlements too, across the vast geographical expanse of the Indus Valley civilization. This widespread distribution suggests that writing, or at least this symbolic system, played an important role. Perhaps it was used in trade, for marking ownership, or for administrative purposes. Its presence was clearly felt in many aspects of their lives. Think about it. A civilization that could potentially speak to us directly. Across the immense gulf of time, their thoughts, their beliefs, their societal structure, their stories. All of these might be encoded in those tiny symbols. It is a tantalizing prospect. Each seal is like a message in a bottle, washed ashore from the ocean of the past. We can see the bottle, admire its craftsmanship, but we cannot yet read the message held within its silent script. Section 2, the decipherment dilemma, cracking the Indus code. Why has this ancient script resisted every attempt at decipherment for so long? It is a question that has perplexed scholars for nearly a century. One primary reason is the frustrating lack of a bilingual text. Think of the Rosetta Stone. It famously provided the same decree in 3 scripts: Egyptian hieroglyphs, Demotic, and Ancient Greek. This parallel text was the crucial key that unlocked hieroglyphs. For the Indus script, no such Rosetta Stone has ever been found. nothing to give us that vital first foothold into its meaning. The inscriptions themselves present another major hurdle. They are incredibly short. Most consist of just a handful of symbols. The average length is about 5 or 6 characters. The longest known continuous inscription is only about 17 symbols long. This brevity makes statistical analysis, a common tool in decipherment, exceedingly difficult. There is very little repeating context to work with. Imagine trying to understand English if all you had were random 5-word snippets from different books. It would be a monumental challenge. Yet the potential prize for cracking this elusive code is immense. It could unlock a treasure trove of knowledge. We could learn about their culture in their own words, understand their religious beliefs, their rituals, their cosmology. We might discover the names of their leaders, or if they even had any. Perhaps the script holds clues to the very reasons for their civilization's gradual decline and eventual disappearance. The script is a silent repository of answers to so many of our questions. It holds the key to their lost world. Generations of brilliant minds have attempted to unravel its meaning. Linguists, archaeologists, epigraphers, and even amateur enthusiasts. All have grappled with these ancient symbols, proposing various theories and methodologies. Some have tried to link it to other known ancient scripts or language families. Others have employed computational analysis. Yet, despite these dedicated efforts, the Indus script continues to guard its secrets well. It remains a silent, formidable challenge to modern ingenuity and our desire to connect with the past. Section 3. Whispers of Meaning. Theories on the script's true nature. A fundamental debate continues to rage among experts. Is the Indus script a true writing system in the way we understand it? Does it actually represent a spoken language, complete with grammar and syntax like Egyptian hieroglyphs or Sumerian cuneiform? Or could it be something else entirely different? The answers to these basic questions remain elusive and are central to how we approach the problem. The nature of the script itself is a core part of its enduring mystery. Some scholars have put forward the argument that it might not be a full-fledged linguistic system. They suggest it could be a form of proto-writing. Or perhaps it is a more limited system of symbolic marks. These marks could convey specific information about families, clans, deities, or trade goods. They might denote ownership or the origin of items without encoding full sentences. This view that it's not a true language is highly controversial and not universally accepted by researchers in the field. If, however, the script does represent a spoken language, then which language family might it belong to? This question opens up another fascinating avenue of speculation and research. Many theories have been proposed over the years. Some of the most persistent suggestions link it to the Dravidian family of languages. These languages are still spoken today by hundreds of millions of people, primarily in South India. Could the Indus people have spoken an early form of Dravidian? It's a compelling idea. Other possibilities include the script representing a language isolate, a language with no known relatives, lost to the tides of time. Or perhaps it was related to other ancient, now extinct languages of the region, of which we have little record. Some have even tried to connect it to early Indo-Aryan languages, though this is generally less accepted due to chronological and linguistic considerations. The mystery of the script deepens with each unanswered question. Was its language lost in a subsequent migration, or did it simply fade into silence as the civilization itself did? The quest to make these ancient symbols speak continues. Section 1. When the ground groaned, Earth's restless power, we've peered into the skies, contemplating how a changing climate might have parched the Indus lands. The slow, relentless creep of drought certainly paints a compelling picture of decline. But the Earth holds other, more sudden terrors. Imagine the ground itself, the very foundation of their magnificent cities, turning treacherous. The Indian subcontinent is a region of significant geological activity. It is here that the Indian tectonic plate continues its inexorable collision with the Eurasian plate, a slow-motion cosmic impact that raised the mighty Himalayas. This ongoing geological drama means the land is far from stable, prone to powerful tremors that can reshape landscapes in mere moments. Could devastating earthquakes have played a crucial role in the Indus enigma? It's a sobering possibility. A powerful seismic event, or a series of them, could have wrought unimaginable destruction upon their meticulously planned urban centers. Buildings would crumble, infrastructure like drains and walls would collapse. More critically, earthquakes can dramatically alter the course of rivers. They can uplift land, block existing channels, and force water to find new paths. Considering how utterly dependent the Indus civilization was on its river systems for agriculture, transport, and sustenance, such a rerouting could have been catastrophic. A lifeline severed not by drought, but by a violent spasm of the earth. Archaeological evidence at some Indus sites does hint at possible seismic damage. Collapsed walls, jumbled layers of debris, and sudden shifts in occupation levels could be interpreted as the scars of ancient earthquakes. For instance, the site of Kalibangan on the banks of the now dry Gagar River shows evidence of what some archaeologists believe to be earthquake damage prior to its abandonment. While direct proof linking specific seismic events to the civilization's widespread decline is challenging to unearth after millennia, the sheer tectonic restlessness of the region makes it a potent candidate. It adds another layer of vulnerability to their existence. Thus, the very earth that nurtured them, providing fertile soil and foundational stability, might have also harbored a destructive potential. An advanced civilization capable of extraordinary feats of urban planning and social organization would still be at the mercy of these immense natural forces. It's a stark reminder that even the most brilliant societies are ultimately guests on a dynamic, ever-changing planet. The ground beneath their feet, seemingly so solid, could have been an unseen enemy, contributing to the complex tapestry of factors that led to their fading from the historical stage. Beyond the grand forces of climate and geology, other more insidious factors may have contributed to the Indus decline. Consider the grim possibility of widespread disease. The Indus cities, with their relatively dense populations, could have been fertile ground for epidemics. While their sanitation systems were advanced for their time, a novel pathogen or a particularly virulent strain of an existing disease could have swept through communities with devastating speed. Some archaeological finds, such as the scattered, unceremonious burials of skeletons found in the upper levels of Mohenjo-Daro, have fueled speculation about a sudden catastrophe, perhaps a deadly pestilence for which they had no defense. These skeletons, discovered in contorted positions, not in formal graves, suggest a society in its final chaotic throes, unable to even perform proper burial rites for its dead. While some scholars attribute these deaths to conflict or massacre, others point towards disease as a more plausible explanation for such scenes, especially if other evidence of widespread warfare is lacking. A pandemic could have decimated the workforce, disrupted social structures, and created an atmosphere of fear and despair. It would have weakened the cities from within, making them more vulnerable to other pressures, a silent killer leaving emptiness in its wake. Another vital artery for the Indus civilization was its extensive trade network. They were skilled artisans and merchants, their distinctive seals and beads found as far afield as Mesopotamia. This maritime and overland trade brought in valuable raw materials such as lapis lazuli and tin, and provided markets for their own sophisticated goods. What if this intricate web of commerce collapsed? Historical records from Mesopotamia indicate a decline in trade with Meluhha, widely believed to be the Indus region, around the same time the IVC began to wane. The reasons for this trade disruption are unclear, perhaps internal issues in Mesopotamia or instability along trade routes. The economic impact of such a trade collapse would have been severe. Industries dependent on imported materials or export markets would falter. The prosperity that underpinned their urban centers would diminish. This loss of economic vitality could have eroded the social cohesion and the very raison d'etre of some settlements. Imagine a bustling port city slowly falling silent as the ships stop arriving. Like a body starved of essential nutrients, the Indus economy might have withered, contributing to the overall decline, a severed lifeline leading to a slow economic strangulation that compounded their other woes. We've explored external pressures, a changing climate, restless earth, potential disease, and failing trade. But what if part of the story lies within the Indus people themselves? What if there was an internal shift, a change in ideology or societal priorities that led them to consciously transform their way of life, even to abandon their grand cities? This is perhaps the most speculative yet intriguing of the lesser-known theories. It invites us to consider not just a collapse, but a deliberate transition, a societal reset on their own terms, however enigmatic those terms may be to us now. This idea gains a certain resonance when we recall the unique character of the Indus Valley civilization, a society that for centuries managed to thrive without the glorification of kings, without monumental temples to all-powerful gods, and seemingly without large-scale warfare or systemic slavery. Their focus appeared to be on order, craftsmanship, trade, and communal well-being. If their societal values were indeed so different from their contemporaries, could their response to mounting pressures also have been different? Perhaps they didn't cling to a failing model until the bitter end, but instead chose a different path. Could a spiritual or ideological transformation have led to a decentralization, a move away from the large urban centers towards smaller, more self-sufficient rural communities? Some scholars suggest that the very uniformity that characterized their material culture during their peak might have given way to increasing regionalism in their later phases. This could indicate a weakening of central control or a conscious decision to adopt more localized ways of life. Perhaps the complexities and stresses of maintaining large cities in the face of environmental and economic challenges led to a collective desire for a simpler existence. The voiceover from our journey hints at this, a civilization that lived without kings, war, or slaves, that may have chosen to walk away on their own terms. This perspective shifts the narrative from one of passive victimhood to active agency. It suggests that the Indus people, faced with an increasingly untenable world, might have made conscious choices to adapt, to disperse, to transform their society from the ground up. Their cities didn't necessarily all end in fire and ruin, but perhaps faded as people gradually sought new ways to live, carrying their knowledge and traditions with them, leaving a legacy more subtle than stone, but no less profound. The persistent echo unearthing a lost world anew. For millennia, the Indus Valley civilization lay dormant, a forgotten giant slumbering beneath the soil. Its magnificent cities, once teeming with life, were reduced to enigmatic mounds. Then, in the 1920s, the spades of archaeologists broke the silence. They unearthed a civilization of staggering scale and sophistication, a world that predated many known empires. Its rediscovery was a shockwave. It redrew the maps of ancient history. It forced us to ask, how could such brilliance be so completely erased from memory? The path to understanding has been fraught with challenges. Colonial-era archaeology often overlooked or misinterpreted its significance. The turmoil of partition divided not just nations, but also crucial archaeological sites and research efforts. Access to many areas remains limited, further hampering comprehensive investigation. Even today, an astonishing truth persists. Perhaps as much as 90% of Indus Valley sites remain unexcavated. Imagine that. 9/10 of this immense civilization still waits. Its secrets are locked securely in the earth, untouched by modern eyes. This means the answers to our most pressing questions may still be buried. They could lie just beneath the foundations of bustling modern cities. Cities like Lahore or Karachi, unknowingly, built atop the ghosts of an even older urbanism. This concept of history, hidden in plain sight, is captivating. It suggests that the past is not a distant sealed chapter, it is an active layer beneath our present. A layer holding untold stories, stories of innovation, of community, and perhaps of disappearance. The story of the Indus Valley civilization is therefore a living investigation. It is a testament to the dynamic nature of history itself. Each new find, each re-evaluation of old evidence shifts our understanding. It challenges long-held assumptions about early human societies, about what it means to be civilized, the IVC's quiet grandeur, its lack of ostentatious rulers, its sheer scale. All these elements continue to beckon us. They draw us into the profound allure of the unknown, urging us to keep digging, keep questioning. A tapestry of shadows. Understanding the Great Fade, the Indus Valley civilization did not vanish in a single fiery cataclysm. There was no Pompeii-like event to mark its end. Instead, it seems to have undergone a gradual, complex fading. a slow dimming of its vibrant urban life over centuries. We've explored the prime suspects, the weakening monsoons turning fertile plains to dust, the enigmatic script, its messages still unread, a silent testament, the old theories of Aryan invasions now largely replaced by models of cultural assimilation and transformation. It was a confluence, a web of interacting pressures. To this intricate tapestry we must add the lesser-known yet plausible contributors, the restless earth itself, tectonic shifts potentially rerouting crucial rivers or devastating cities with violent tremors, the silent scourge of pandemic disease sweeping through dense populations, leaving desolation in its wake, the lifeblood of trade with distant lands like Mesopotamia. What if it dried up, strangling their economy? And then, the most enigmatic of all, a possible internal spiritual shift, a conscious societal reset, a turning away from the old ways. Consider their unique societal blueprint: no kings, no armies, no glory, just brilliance. This wasn't a civilization built on the familiar foundations of autocratic power and military might. Their strength lay in organization, in standardization, in communal enterprise. Could this very structure have influenced their response to crisis? Perhaps it led not to a final bloody stand in their grand cities, but to a more measured, decentralized adaptation, a gradual dispersal into smaller, more sustainable communities. This leads us to the compelling idea of the Indus people walking away on their own terms. Faced with environmental hardship, economic strain, and perhaps internal ideological change, they may have chosen transformation over collapse, a quiet unraveling of their urban experiment. This would explain the lack of widespread destruction. The cities were not so much conquered as gradually abandoned, their inhabitants carrying their skills, their traditions, their very essence elsewhere, leaving behind a profound silence and even more profound questions for us to ponder. The unbroken thread, legacy in a living past. The Indus Valley civilization didn't truly collapse in a spectacle of fire and dramatic ruin. It faded into silence. Its complex language, its unique system of leadership, its foundational myths and legends all seem lost to us, erased by the relentless march of time, or are they? This is where the mystery deepens and the search takes a new, intriguing turn. We must ask a provocative question: what if it never really ended? What if its essence, its people, its accumulated knowledge simply transformed? What if its people, carrying their invaluable cultural DNA, live on? Not as a distinct, identifiable group, but as an integral part of the vibrant tapestry of South Asia. Their knowledge, their practices, their worldviews, perhaps these became woven into the very fabric of the oldest traditions of the subcontinent, diffused and absorbed, subtly shaping the beliefs, arts and technologies of later cultures, hidden in plain sight within rituals, within craft traditions, within agricultural practices that have endured for millennia. The echoes of the Indus may be quieter than monumental ruins, but they could be far more pervasive. Archaeologists and historians continue to find tantalizing hints of this continuity in pottery styles, in religious symbolism that seems to bridge the Harappan world and early Hinduism, in urban planning concepts, in weights and measures. The search for these unbroken threads is an ongoing quest, a quest to connect the deep past with the living present, to understand how a civilization can fade, yet still leave an indelible, if subtle, imprint. The story of the Indus Valley civilization is far from over. Its silence is not an ending, but an invitation. An invitation to listen more closely, to look more deeply. The mysteries buried beneath our feet, beneath the layers of time, still beckon. They remind us that our understanding of human history is constantly evolving, and that the past, even a past as enigmatic as the Indus, may hold surprising relevance for our future. The Indus people may have faded, but their journey, and our journey to understand them, continues. The Indus Valley civilization didn't collapse in fire. It faded into silence, its language, leaders and legends all lost. But what if it never really ended? What if its people, its knowledge, live on, hidden within the oldest traditions of South Asia? Next time on Planet What? We decode ancient maps that may show the world before history. If this episode sparked your curiosity, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the mysteries still buried beneath our feet.